So I guess I'll just start asking questions. You guys are ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, this is like someone else asked something similar as well, but where is CPM like up to as far as everybody in it right now? What's the status on everybody in it?
Kaz and Jenza haven't really spoken up in a while. Kaz was traveling, and then he came back, and we heard from him a little bit right around the tournament, and then haven't heard much from him since then. And Jenza, we just haven't heard from in a while. We know she moved and didn't have a PlayStation at her new place, and that's kind of like the last we've heard. So, for the most part, it's me, Kane, Nova Knife, and Iron Wolf Saber
Okay.
pulling the weight these days. So, yeah,
I heard
it's
Nova
pretty
got a
straightforward.
job as well.
Nova got a job. I just got a job at the beginning of this week.
Oh,
So,
congrats.
or I had some part time work, but that is now full time work, and yeah, so I'll try to keep up the best I can. But
Oh yeah, and I think Iron Wolf is doing classes and has actually a side gig going on too. So everyone is doing things as well as Dust stuff too.
Yeah, that's good to hear for you guys. Although
But
Jenza and Kaz not being around, uh, well, that means like four of the six CPM guys are actually around. It's slightly worrying from a CPM angle.
true.
it just means more of us to go around to for you guys. The
Yeah.
four of us.
Ooh, specific question for Hans. That can go off this is you promised a blog post about aim assist a while
Oh,
back.
yes.
Not.
Um, so that was something that I had planned to sit down and do, and got distracted and got distracted. By the time I sat down to do it, like pretty much no one was talking about it anymore. And then I was like, well, I could write the blog post about why no one's talking about it anymore. But then I realized it was going to be a pretty boring blog post because it was basically going to be this is another feature, like a lot of features that people freaked the hell out about when it first came out, and then after a couple of weeks got used to it, and then it was no longer a big deal. And that's pretty much how I feel about aim assist, which is that in its current form, it's pretty acceptable, and it's done exactly what it was supposed to do, which was balance the gap between younger players and veterans, and give uh, people that aren't super good Twitch shooters a little bit of a bump in being able to hit their target. And it's pretty well balanced compared to what other shooters are on the market. Like Battlefield's got a heavier aim assist feature even than Dust, and Call of Duty's also pretty bad. Um, but yeah, I think it's like a lot of features that people see and they go into sheer panic about, and instantly go into, screw you CCP mode. And then after a few weeks people realize, oh my gosh, maybe this game hasn't like been destroyed because of it.
Um, for me, the issue I have, like, I do have some issues with it. I've been running primarily with a DualShock controller since the aim assist came out, just to kind of get a feel for it, and I've been playing, stuff like going back and playing like Battlefield 4. I've been meaning to pick up Halo again, just to kind of as a comparison. The thing that I've seen that's problematic is, I would say some people would describe it as the magnetism. So, like, if your cursor is over um, a person, and then like say they jump up into the air, the cursor potentially being pulled towards them without your input. That to me may be a little bit much. I really don't have much issue with friction based aim assist. That's where the cursor like, kind of sticks to them in the sense that it's harder. It goes slower and slower as it goes over a target, so it gives you kind of more of that fine tuned aiming. Um, to me, that the magnetism aspect seems maybe like it may be a little bit much.
Magnetism lasts for about a second, if that. Like it'll only quickly bump if they move suddenly, and then it breaks free almost immediately. Like it won't. There's not like it'll never like just move your cursor around following a guy. It's just kind
No,
of a
it
quick. It's a little snap bump, and then it's gone. And in some ways, these kinds of things can throw off your aim too. If you're good enough that you're
yes,
going for headshots a lot of the time, this screws you up. And I think this is
yes.
what's really well balanced about it, which is that the pro players are, for the most part, turning it off. Like the better you are at Twitch shooting, the less you want this thing interfering with your play. And I mean, I think that's a big sign of whether something's well balanced or not. If it was inherently overpowered, then everybody would use it, including the top players. And the fact that as you go up the skill curve, it becomes useful for a while, and then it falls off, and it's being useful. Then, I mean, to me, that's exactly how it should be.
Okay. I guess we'll move on to the next one then. I'll go for a form one this time. Let's see. Where's my rollover SP?
I was actually just
That's a
looking at that one.
great question. We've pestered CCP over and over and over and over again about this, and just gotten no answer about it whatsoever.
Um,
It's
uh,
really depressing news, but yeah.
and for some people who may not know the history of that, the rollover SP, back in January of this year, there was actually kind of an informal kind of player vote on how to maybe tweak how the SP cap work. It used to be that the cap was daily, so you would need to cap out every single day, and then the cap was reset every single day. Now we're on to a weekly cap with a soft cap after you reach that, where you cap out at 1,000 points, no matter how many war points you get. Um, at the time when that vote was finalized, and so we got weekly cap with a kind of a soft um, cap after you accrue that weekly SP, it was kind of indicated that this would be a temporary thing, and that something that a lot of people have been clamoring for a while is that SP rollover. So basically, if you don't use SP that week, then it rolls over, as the name would suggest, so you can cap it out for the next week. Um, and that was kind of indicated that that might be implemented, but yeah, we've not really heard anything about that. And that's something that would, I don't know, I think would be a much better system still, to be able to have people be able to bank SP. Because if you go out of town for 1 or 2 weeks, or go on vacation or something like that, the game essentially punishes you for taking breaks, and it doesn't necessarily enable you to play the game how you would choose to play it.
Yeah, I was just gonna add like daily login as well, like sort of compounds that. So
Um, I mean, the daily login stuff doesn't bother me as much because I've just seen that used. I've seen it used so often, and it's small enough of a bump to where it's not like it's not the end of the world if you don't get it, but it is enough of a bump to kind of give you that little bit of incentive or push to kind of log in. But at the same time, if you're just logging in and logging off, it's kind of makes you wonder how useful it's being. But I don't know. It has its pros and cons, that daily login bonus.
okay, I guess we'll move on to the next one then. The one above the rollover SP one, I'd be interested in hearing about new roles and vehicle classes, e.g. example, pilot suits, speeders, MAVs, versus completing the racial symmetry, and what CPM feels would be more important priority for the game. Also like to hear the... Well, we'll do the second part of that after. So that was adding new roles and vehicle classes versus completing current racial symmetry.
Well, I think they need to finish the balance project that they're doing right now. I think it would be fairly reckless to jump into adding a bunch of vehicles. I mean, look at how much work you saw the spreadsheets today in the post. Look at how much work is going into just rebalancing a handful of the core vehicles, and it's going to take the next few weeks of working back and forth with the public and the designers, and I certainly hope that the designers are paying attention to those threads and modifying their work as we go, and spot problems but it all takes time and it all takes work. And if we started adding in Minotaur vehicles, Amara vehicles, pilot suits on top of this, then yeah, you're dragging the process out into, you know, how many more months of waiting around. And so I think it's smart to, especially since CCP Blam, the old vehicle guy is no longer there. I think a, a good stopping point to sit there and figure out how vehicles should operate in the first place. Um, I mean, I think one of the goals, as much as possible, should be really to figure out how the power level is differentiated between tiers of vehicle. And just, I mean, same thing with people talking about with drop suits. I think applies to vehicles as well. And there needs to be a logical progression as you go from standard into proto. And I would love for that to get nailed down here in a simpler form before they move on to more advanced stuff. And I think it's natural to be excited about and want, because we're all bored of Caldari tanks and Galente tanks, but at the same time, it does us no good to rush this if it means that we end up further and further and further off from having a balance that's actually playable and fun.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I hope gets accomplished doing this vehicle balancing pass is um, really getting the role and how vehicles and infantry interact. Because I think that's something, both in terms of on an offensive side, infantry versus vehicles, but also in the terms of infantry's working with vehicles too. But one thing that can be said though is I'm happy to have those stats posted as soon as they are, because I think the player community can go through those stats and just poke holes in a way that you just in terms of in manpower. I just think that CC will be beneficial to CCP. I mean, I think there's going to be people going, what the heck's going on? But at the same time, you're going to have people that will thoughtfully go through, look at those stats, and kind of figure out good, bad, the ugly, and about what's going on there. Um, I think someone did point out some things that would be nice to expound on in terms of that information. One was be the uh, with adding shields, um, increases the recharge delay. Adding armor decreases the top speed of the vehicle. Those penalties, it would be nice to know what those are, to kind of give people the full picture. Um, and I know one thing that someone was hoping that the devs would maybe talk about a bit is maybe the roles they see shield tanks versus armor tanks. They've talked about it a little bit in terms of the hit and run aspect of shield tanks versus stand and deliver with armor vehicles. But I think it would be nice to have the devs maybe talk a bit about with the players their kind of ideas in terms of those roles.
Okay. Well, someone was asking, he's sort of happy to see the spreadsheet today, but like, where was all this like months and months ago? I think we can all somewhat agree with that point. But this is
Yeah.
good progress. Okay. I mean, people asking your reactions and thoughts on the vehicle changes themselves.
Um, I'm still working my way through my own notes and my own write up of the spreadsheet. We got them like what came like 2 days before they posted it. Like we just got these the other day, and there was talk of, well, do you need some time to look over this before we release them to the public? And the CPM pretty much just said no, just release them. Like if there's problems, people will spot them, but there's no point like waiting around for us to do our full review before the players see it. So we kind of just brush it around. There was a talk of a potential delay till next week, and we pretty much freaked the hell out on them and said, no, that's ridiculous. Like, you've got this, it's written up, you've got all these pictures, like, you just need to post this. Like, there's no good reason to put this off. Like, just get it out there. And we were super excited to see it happen like 24 hours later. So that's and this period of being able to go back and forth and discuss all of it is exactly why. I mean, it's not the only reason why, but it's one of the big advantages to putting this off another month. And that was something that the CPM discussed with CCP and said, look, if you've got to make a delay, at least make it a useful delay and use this opportunity to engage the public in a balancing process that you haven't done this openly before, and use it as a model for future passes on stuff as well. As far as the actual like specific proposal, I think there are a couple of factors here that are making it really tough to evaluate. One is not knowing how AV weaponry is factoring into this. Like, it's hard to come to a conclusion about the vulnerability of vehicles when we don't know if they're going to nerf forge guns, buff them, swarms, whatever. Like, it's just that's a huge part of it. So that's one of the things I'm asking, CCP right now is trying to figure out and get some context of when the AV weaponry is when and how it's being adjusted, because until then it makes it difficult to evaluate a lot of this. I think the core sort of concept of vulnerable vehicles that have a much more invulnerable period with these active modules is really interesting, though I think one of the other factors that's going to need to be modulated in all this is price. And that if a basic, not basic as in like standard level, but if a tank is driving around, not in combat, not under fire, and it's extremely vulnerable, I think, as opposed to just a tank that is relatively resilient all the time, I think by sort of separating it into tough to kill and easy to kill modes, you're just going to have more tanks and more dropships and more jeeps dying in general. And I think CCP is fine with more vehicles dying in general. I think what that's going to need then is a reduction in cost to make these much more affordable. I think a dedicated vehicle user should be able to use vehicles all the time in every match and not have to grind using an infantry profession. So I think that's my two big concerns here are the cost of vehicles and how AV weaponry factors in. But I think the actual idea of giving vehicles a window when they can go into a danger zone and operate is pretty sound.
Okay. Oh, just someone asking in chat. Yeah, I put a thread on this on the forums. Captain Crutches. Yesterday, I should have really done more advertising for this, but actually debating whether or not to actually do this in the first place a couple of days ago, and I finally just decided, well, go ahead and do it. Yeah, then we had Logibro plugging us on Twitter. Thanks to Logibro. Anyway, I guess we will move on to the next thing. Someone's asking about test server, and if you've heard anything about that. I know CCP have said that that's something they want to do, but there's limitations.
Yeah, a test server would be such a huge boon, I think, to Dust. I know that there are definitely specific hurdles in terms of doing a test server on a console environment. And also, if you taking into account right now, we're being on a monthly iteration cycle. I mean, just in terms of, planning a release, putting in the work for the release, and delivering that release, there's not a whole lot of time. I'm not sure how a test server would really fit into that type of release cycle. It's probably one of the other hurdles that's kind of there too.
Okay.
But it would be awesome to have.
It would be awesome to have. Any thoughts, Hans?
Yeah, I mean,
Or should I move on?
CCP wants it as much as we do. I mean, that's something I can definitely say from our internal discussions. You can tell the designers crave this the same way that the players do. Like, it's as valuable to those that are making the game as it is to those that are playing it. So it's like everybody's on the same team. There's no like conflict there. It's just up to, technical and business related stuff. People in suits got to figure out whether or not we can have it and how. But when it comes down to the actual line developers and the players, everyone's on the same page. Like, we need it. So, and I guess on a somewhat related note, there's all this talk all the time about whether it's moving to PS4, whether it's moving to PC. I'll just put it out there, like I have other places. Frankly, if I had to choose between the two, I would want Dust on the PC before the PS4, for this very reason. I think the lack of a test server is the biggest thing that's a giant anchor, kind of slowing down this whole process. And if we had a test server and things could be played out and tested and got feedback and all that before it was then given to everybody at once, you know, I think the fact that there's a testing process with everything that's done, that you just have to sort of deploy it and see how it works and get all of the mass sort of participation and the feedback from that they can't get internally. By sort of segregating it onto a test server, it changes the tone about everything. It's no longer about, oh my god, you destroyed my game. It's, oh, this is an interesting thing, but it's not working. And
Yeah.
that's basically more or less what's happening right now in the main game itself. It's just that people are treated like every single thing that they released is supposed to be absolutely set in stone and finished. And so it sort of incites this panic and this, anger and frustration over, what is an evolving process, what is an evolving game and an evolving series of builds. So I'm always going to root for it going to the PC before the PS4 because I want the test server so bad, and I think it's going to be easier on the PC than on the PS3 or PS4.
Well, I mean, I could see the only issue there is that you have x86 architecture on both PS4 and PC. So, I mean, if you're going to bother porting it to PC, you might as well have it ported to PS4 as well.
Yeah,
Is the only situation I would see, the only thing I would see there.
we should probably mention that if anybody hasn't noticed yet, Hilmar, the CCP CEO, did an interview with Massively that was released yesterday, where he pretty much said, we're not worrying right now about any other builds on any other consoles. We're not working on it. We're not planning on it. We're merely at a discussion phase about pros and cons. But they're pretty firmly committed towards making this work on the PS3 and supporting it on the PS3 and supporting the PS3 community. They're very much focused on that and that alone. So as the CPM, we've seen people ask us all the time. I'll just be perfectly honest. I've seen zero evidence that CCP is actually working on another build for another console. So there's no if they are, they're super, super keeping it secret even from us. But I sincerely doubt it. I do not think that they are actively working towards another build right now.
So no Wii U version then?
Oh, Jesus. Okay, that was funny.
Okay, people asking rail rifle and combat rifle. There were pictures and video of those months ago. This pushback's just a one-off, right? Like, we're not going to be waiting in 1.8 for these to come along.
Well, we wouldn't be able to specifically say when they would come out, but to me, the sooner the better, of course.
Oh yeah, I mean, the combat rifle and the rail rifle are two that they're very much working on. And then I'm up against the glass. You're right with what I could say more than that, but I would not be super down about either of those weapons. I don't think you're going to have to wait too long for them.
Because the combat rifle was in the event when it was originally posted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember.
It's telling me it's gonna log me off. Hang on.
I will say right now that that's a pretty strong clue right there. I mean, that's as much as I can really give without getting in trouble.
See what else we got. Someone's asking about player counts are dropping over time. You worried, or CCP worried about that at the moment?
CCP doesn't appear to be worried about it at all. The thing to remember is that CCP is really not out there pushing this game. They're not out there really marketing it or actively seeking to acquire a whole bunch of new players in any kind of large quantity. They had planned to promote the launch of Dust in May for Uprising. They certainly talked about a big promotional campaign at FanFest that never materialized. Um, and I think that's what people have to remember when you look at PCU. You're talking about thousands of people playing this every day, but the PCU count right now is momentum alone. Like it's basically the community of people that play the game without any effort on CCP's part whatsoever to acquire new players. And I think that's pretty significant because when you start comparing Dust to other games or other free to play shooters that are on the market, a lot of those companies are advertising, they are pushing it, they are promoting their game, and they're still running not that much higher PCU counts than Dust. So I think it's so hard to look at just a single metric, the PCU count, and come to all kinds of hard and fast conclusions about whether this game is doomed or not. When really what that number represents is the number that CCP can get and hold without any effort whatsoever. And they will be putting effort into it. They do have the money, the time, the resources. Like they will be doing promotion for this game at a point when they're proud of it and ready to show it off, and ready to expose millions of players to it. And they've got all kinds of clever ways to do that, but they're going to keep fixing it and getting it to a point where they're super proud of it before they go and pull that trigger. So they've got a plan. They've mapped this out. They're watching the numbers. They've got far more metrics than just the PCU count even, and they don't appear to be worried. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not necessarily concerned. Obviously, a PCU count dropping it causes all kinds of things, all the way down to the matchmaking level. It impacts, people's ability to get a fair fight if there's fewer people logging in. And eventually, games do collapse when they get to a point where there's not enough people logging in to fill matches and that sort of thing. So do I think CCP is like in any kind of safe zone where they are under no threat from sort of an implosion here, or just a quiet, sort of petering out? No, I think it still could certainly happen depending on how these releases go and how soon they get new content. But is the current numbers well within their realms of what they consider to be acceptable given the effort that they're putting into promoting the game? Yes, and so
yeah, I just know that all of us would be happy to see the downward trend of the PCU be not a downward trend. So
yeah, of course.
I'm thinking,
I personally don't think it'll happen till we start seeing chunks of new content. Like if we get to a point, in another, few patches like this where CCP feels pretty comfortable with the core and they're ready to start building on it and put all their teams back onto building new things and new toys and new maps, and they have all of their sort of focus on the new, then I think that's probably going to when we'll see a big kick up. I don't know that just polishing the game alone is going to work because
no.
it doesn't change the fact that there's not new stuff for any of us to do, especially those of us that have been playing since beta. You could even make the argument that there's less stuff for us to do in game now with, overtime, vehicles being removed and weapons being removed, and it's not always been forward progress as far as the amount of stuff there is to do. And so I think you can polish it all day long and still get a PCU drop that really just has to do with the fact that there's not new stuff coming in the pipeline. But that could change.
Okay, well, I've got a good follow-up question for this, and what's your thoughts on the coming back to Dust event?
The one where they give away all the Black Eagles?
Yeah, it's to me, I don't know. Like, I know that's something that is done from business standpoint, but it just it's just I remember seeing a bank commercial spoofing this. Basically someone's sitting there and then they walk up to this new person and say, "Here's some ice cream for being new," and then the person who's been standing there for a while goes, "Well, are you giving me anything?" No, it's like, no, not at all. It's definitely, it smacks of not treating the people who've been actively playing and in a fair way. I mean, you can understand the motivations behind it, but I don't know, just the way it came across and the way it was worded, it just felt kind of like a bit of a slap in the face to people who have been actively playing the game because it's like, don't play Dust for 60 days, log in and profit.
Yeah, I mean, part of that was just the reward choice themselves. Like Quaif suits and Black Eagles are like probably two of the coolest prizes that you can get. That
Well,
they've given away as prizes for playing the game and for participation and that sort of thing. And so, especially since they haven't been offered anytime recently, then yeah, I do think it was insulting to current players. I think it was the rewards were poorly thought out, and we certainly mentioned that to them, and once again emphasize that this is really why everybody, not just the designers, but all the way up to the community teams, they've got to share this stuff with the CPM beforehand. Like we could have spotted that, we would have said something. We've had conversations that have been productive and where they have made changes on event rewards before. This is just something that fell through the cracks, and it's frustrating because it was one of those preventable situations where a lot of players were insulted and rightfully pissed off, and you know these situations are preventable. I don't have any objection to there being some kind of bonus or benefit or coming back into the game sort of thing, but I would like them much more to be opportunities for players that have been away to sort of catch up quickly with existing players rather than here's a whole bunch of Quaff and Black Eagle drop suits, which are like things that current players can't just go out and get in an event. And they could still put them in an event like one of these next couple events over the next month. They could offer those to current players, but the fact that they hadn't been offered for so long, and then suddenly new players or people that haven't been playing get a whole bunch, it wasn't very well thought out.
So you're saying maybe something like giving people an active booster for coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot more sense. Is give people something that lets them catch up, or even just a reward that's interesting, but not something like, especially with like a Black Eagle, where you actually have unique fitting. The ability to have dual weapons on a suit like that is like it's just odd to me. To me, that should be like a super super sacred type of reward, and that it affects game balance even, and to just sort of throw a whole bunch at a player who hadn't logged in for a while. It was tacky.
Yeah, actually thinking about how many people play Dust or have stopped for or 60 days even, that's a lot of Black Eagle suits. If you
Well,
add them
yeah,
all
yeah,
up.
to all of a sudden just sort of like throw all over the place and put back in the game. Now, granted, we don't have the ability to trade items, so that somewhat alleviates how many you'll see because people will hang on to them and hoard them. Uh, that's what I do with most of those bonus fancy type things. Is I just hang on to them because someday they'll be on market and they'll be worth a ton. So I don't know that how much they're going to be put back into circulation on the battlefield, but that's the type of thing that should be carefully considered before an event like this is you know finalized.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the rest of the events. People have been asking about events. We talked about logging in bonus, we talked about coming back to Dust. Victory bonus, so that's the first 3 wins of the day, you get double skill points, from what I understand, or skill points based on war points.
honestly, a benefit on top of war is something I would definitely want to see be something just built into the game. Whether it's just your first 3 victories or something that regularly happens, like when you win, you get a tangible benefit or boost from winning, is something I would like to see in the game.
Yeah, I think win based requirements are one of the strongest things that they've come up with recently. I love the fact that it's now that your rewards during just the match grindy sort of events involve a win percentage. I think that was really smart because it's no longer about just like logging your character in and AFKing if you can whip out a rubber band, but it's about I'm not going to get this if I don't actually do something to help my team. And I'm all about any kind of incentives that can be put in to encourage people to play the game the way it's supposed to be played.
Okay. Well, moving on to other win bonus things, the faction warfare challenge. Now, did you guys get to look at this before it got posted?
Not the specific faction warfare one. We knew there was going to be a faction warfare related event, but that was another one that just sort of went right over our heads and got posted as far as the details of that. So we had a vague idea. It was mentioned in a meeting like, 2 months ago or a month and a half ago or something like that, where they said we're going to do something that's faction related, but we hadn't seen on paper the details of this one before it got posted.
Okay. And thoughts on the faction warfare event? I know you're big into faction warfare hands.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think it's nice that they're allowing people to sort of choose which faction they go for, and that the rewards are divvied out accordingly. Um, there wasn't anything for heavy suits. Like I would have liked to have seen the Amar slot been a heavy suit based setup, just because then you have all three main sizes of drop suit represented.
Yeah, that would have
But
been nice.
other than the rewards of that one, the actual like structure of it itself, I thought was pretty. It wasn't like there wasn't any major red flags that jumped out at me.
Okay. Um, any more thoughts, or shall we just move on to the next couple things?
I guess the only thing I should add briefly is that the only thing that frustrates me about stuff like this is that there's still this giant question mark about how exactly the two game like how exactly the like it's really tough to sort of put a finger on exactly what kind of cross-factional cooperation is going on, or whether the impact on Eve's side is, whether there's Eve corporations that are seeking out Dust players, or whether it's just like literally just a couple of independent groups. It's been stuck on with Minmatar and Galente being in kind of the dominant slot for a long time, but we don't have a lot of information as to why. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how this affects that. And what I'm really hoping and really pushing in our talks with True Grit is for more information, especially Eve's side, about what's going on in Dust, where these matches are taking place, how this is all affecting. Because the thing to remember is that every time they go out and promote faction warfare like this within Dust and send a whole bunch of people into those matches and they start doing all this stuff, it's impacting Eve's sovereignty with very little of the reverse, of very little ways for Eve players to then go and influence what's going on in Dust. So it's sort of a one-way effect pipeline. And the sooner we button that up, the more comfortable I am with these sorts of events. In the meantime, it's more of, I'm not saying they shouldn't promote faction warfare or participation in it, or that they shouldn't have events at all. It's just that we have to remember that these things are affecting sovereignty still.
Yeah, and giving the losing side sniper rifles just didn't really seem like a good combination to me. Because
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to put, like, I don't know that you could. I don't know. That would
I
be
was mostly
yeah.
going for a
I'd have
joke
to see a
there.
bunch of graphs and numbers before I could say one way or the other. But I don't know that giving away sniper rifles as a rewards for an event is necessarily going to like affect whether or not one faction can come back from behind, because we don't know yet what's causing the Minmatar and Galente to be in that dominant position. Like we don't know yet whether it's because they're just the most popular from like a role player, story standpoint, or whether it's because there's two large entities one in each of those factions that's making a giant organized push. Until we have information about what's going on. I don't know that it's quite fair to pin back on something like the event rewards themselves.
Okay, I'd be interested to hear numbers and stats on that if that ever
Yeah,
comes
it's something
around.
we're looking into.
Something that would be, I think would help with faction warfare immensely. Just a little bit, a little thing would be to get a Crest API system in place for the dust districts, like we have in place for Molten Heath. Just because that way everyone can really kind of get a feel for what's going on and what changes are taking place in faction warfare.
I never actually thought of that. That's actually something I guess worth pushing for.
Yep. We're having a lot of talks right now with True Grit about faction warfare. I'll say that much. So it's definitely something that's going to get some polish. I think it'll get polish before they go back and work on PC mechanics. That appears to be where it's at in the pipeline, because that's what we're actively talking a lot. So any of you guys out there that are way into faction warfare, have strong thoughts about it, if any of you are part of a large group that's making a giant organized push, if you know anything, you don't even have to necessarily tell me, like, I know there's like strategic considerations. People don't want to like give away their master plan and all that, but I'm super curious as to how people are using this, and I think a lot of it's changing because now that the matchmaking system works and people can actually get into faction warfare matches consistently, that's why we're seeing such a big spike in participation. So
Okay.
now's the time to come to the CPM with your thoughts on it, because it's very much in the works with True Grit right now.
Is there a thread anyone can go like post on, or
I believe Fox 4 has a thread up. Let me see if I can find it.
okay, well I'll let you find that and we'll move on to there's a couple more questions from this guy, just specifically Omega booster pricing, and I know everybody hates this.
Man,
Who wants to go first?
I mean, I'll just say the
Uh,
active boosters at least you can use for events, so I can understand
Yeah.
them being pricey.
yeah. I know that for me personally, I always imagined the Omega booster rather than just being straight up twice as much SP and all that stuff. I thought it would have been, um, and something I know I talked to CCP about is that having it be fill a different role. Like allow a Mega Booster to allow someone with a different type of play style or maybe activity level keep up with people that maybe have a large activity level. So basically, people who don't have a lot of time to play the game but still want to basically keep even with people who do have a lot of time. So that, to me, would equate to something that maybe you cap out everything passively. Like you put an Omega Booster on, and then you don't have to worry about where you go. Like if you cap out that week. To me, both the pricing and not only that, the effect of the Omega Boosters, it just feels like you're just basically saying, here, have this marginally better benefit, and we're going to charge you out the wazoos for it. I mean, granted, maybe that makes sense from a business standpoint and from an economical standpoint in terms of CCP side, but to me, it just kind of it just leaves you a bad taste in your mouth for sure when you look at those prices and you look at kind of like the results
it's tacky.
you get.
I mean, it's just tacky. Like, if you look at what it costs to keep those things plugged in, like, if you keep them plugged in, I mean, we're talking like over $30 a month for this game, and that's like double what most places have for a subscription fee. And I mean, players can see right through this stuff. I mean, it's not like you can't hide this stuff. It is what it is. And Kane's right. You could turn this into a subscription model where there's benefits to that. One of the other really strong ideas that I heard from a player was using Omega boosters, kind of like you were talking about, Gimbal, catching people who have been away from the game. I mean, an Omega booster could be a promotional deal where if you've been away for the game, say 30 days, then you have the option of buying an Omega booster instead of a regular booster that gives you that double skill point boost that lets you catch up to other players, and that way, you're doing two things. You're giving sort of an extra incentive to come back when you're gone because you can actually make up for lost time and catch up to your friends without being sort of permanently left in the dust. Pardon the pun, but that's the sort like there's so many different ways that the Omega booster could be implemented. There's this just reeks of lack of creativity and price gouging. I mean, yes, there's got to be some kind of economic thing driving this because it doesn't really make sense to me from a game design standpoint or from, I mean, and it's just,
Yeah.
I don't like them. I don't like them at all.
Well, I mean, because the way I think about it is if that you're willing to throw down essentially 2 months worth of cash at once, you're almost, to me, you should almost be rewarded for that. So it equaling to more than twice the cost of a standard of a passive booster, it just seems wrong.
Yeah, and we're trying very very hard to get a meeting with marketing or branding or whoever the people are in the company that make these decisions about boosters and promotional events and that sort of thing. Like and just monetization in general. We're trying to get a conversation with that team as soon as possible because there's a lot of serious issues here. I think how Dust is monetized is an extremely important discussion to have, and it's something where we've been almost completely out of the loop on all of those decisions. And to some degree, I get it. A lot of this has to do with money and business decisions, and the CPM are not business people and are not money handlers, and I get that. And in the end, CCP's got to make a profit, and I want that too. But the ways in which we go about this, I mean, that we've suggested as a CPM lots and lots and lots of different things that we would spend money on, and it's frustrating to know that we're not able to have those conversations with the people that we need to have them with. So we've talked about cosmetic items, we've talked about all kinds of extra features that could be added that you could charge Orem for that we feel would be acceptable. And we'd love to give the marketing team more and the monetization team more ideas, more stuff to work with so they can choose the right model here that players are happy with and comfortable with, and not something where you have two categories right now. You've got those that just absolutely hate Omega boosters. I'm in one of those categories. Most of the CPM is in one of those in that category. Then you got the other half people out there who are just looking at this going, you know what? It's not broken. It's not or it's not pay to win. So therefore it's totally okay, and you should all just shut up. And I don't really think that's fair either, because to some degree, people are right. It's not pay to win. You can only use a certain amount of skill points at any given time in battle anyways. So a player gaining more and more skill points with time does not translate to them being inherently more powerful on the battlefield. But I just think from a just from a customer service player base sort of standpoint, it doesn't make sense to just let people who are more wealthy than others or who have more liquid cash at any given time just vault leaps and bounds ahead of others skill point wise, simply because they can throw money at CCP.
Not only that,
quick, just a note. Well, I found it funny that my PS3 crashed in the middle of you talking. Sorry, people on the stream. Is Twitch chat down at the moment? I haven't seen anyone talking in the last 20 minutes, and people on the forum thread said it was down.
It's still. I see a stream here.
Yeah, it still seems to be working on our end. I don't know. The one thing that I think that seems to be lacking is that there's no there's nothing on the market right now that rewards loyalty over time, really. There's no, you put in, you say, yes, CCP, I'm going to do X for 3 months or 2 months or something like that to kind of reach parity, where you reach that point where you get a $15 to $20 type price point. I think that's one of the things that's been kind of a sticking point for a lot of people, is that base boosters kind of it really do exceed those price points that people kind of are accustomed to.
Okay, I haven't seen Twitch chat in the last 20 minutes, so if anyone had any questions, I'm really sorry, but please put them in again and I will make sure they get asked. Okay.
No, there's lots of comments, not necessarily questions here.
Okay. Yeah, I can see chat now. People asking. Although I say that and I just typed something in chat and it didn't work.
Nope, it worked on our end. You said, yeah.
Okay, that didn't display on my end. Ask questions in the forum thread and I will put that in chat again. Because I can't see chat. I don't know, Twitch is breaking for me for some reason.
Yeah, I'm tabbing back to the Q&A thread here and see if there's anything else we've...
There's a few more things. The last one that guy was wanting to ask about is the removal of blueprints, and I guess the merc pack as well, but we'll start with the blueprints. You guys mentioned CCP talked to you a couple of days ago. Was this one of the things brought up?
Well, I mean, talked to us a couple days ago. We talked to him like every single day in Skype. There wasn't a specific meeting that we had a couple days ago or anything. So as far as the removal of blueprints, this is a tough one to talk about. Because there's some stuff that we're even trying to figure out as a CPM internally based on some things we know. Like, it's really swampy ground. There's definitely, let's put it this way, there's definitely something going on with, I mean, I could say there's something going on with monetization in general because we see it publicly. We see Omega boosters are back. We see Merc packs going away.
Yeah.
That much is all out in the open. I think that if I was even a bystander, I would look at that and go, "Oh, it looks like they're shifting away from, selling stuff to selling boosters."
I know. Well, the one thing is, on the long term, BPOs for a game that is around things being destroyed and consumed, and it just honestly, it never made really a whole lot of sense. Even if it is just standard gear or anything like that. I know from my perspective, before I was on CPM, my thought always was that the reason they have BPOs in the game is, and not only that, from also talking from some discussion at FanFest too during some of the panels, was that at this point in the game we don't have to worry about the stuff that makes our weapons. Our weapons are just it's the blueprint, and then we don't have to worry about the materials. So to me, it always seemed like the solution down the road was going to be add in a mechanic to where you have to also have not only the blueprint, but also the stuff to go with it to make the item. But whether or not
like if you were buying, instead of going and buying individual weapons, if you were buying vats of industrial strength nanite goo and all your stuff materialized out of that at a certain number of units based on what the BPO required, then having them at all makes sense. But other than that, I think it's going to be weird. We're trying to figure out more information about what the big picture is here. There's some things we know, there's stuff we don't know. It's a tough one to comment on, let's put it that way.
Okay. Oh, actually, just a question that I'm not sure about. Is it all the merc packs going away?
From the literature that I've read, it seems that it's just the merc pack, because it's merc, veteran, elite.
Yeah.
So it's just merc pack, not the veteran or elite packs.
Okay, I've had some people ask me, or I was talking to someone who thought all of them were going, and I was worried for a little bit.
Well, and And to me, that also makes you wonder. Well, if you're removing BPOs from the market, but then you have this kind of side access to BPOs through another avenue. I mean, see, the problem is you then run into the issue is that
Well, that just looks bad. Let's
yeah,
just say it. That just looks
yeah,
bad, right? So you're
yeah,
pulling
yeah,
it off the market, so people can't buy it with their in-game ISK. But if you have cash, you can go and get BPS. It
yeah,
looks bad, and this is the kind of thing that marketing should know: is that players see that stuff, and whether that's marketing's intent or not, that's how it comes across. Is you're trying to funnel people into spending money, and you know it just looks coercive, and that I think is what we really need. Why we need to have a discussion with them. We need to sit down and brainstorm. And first of all, get the CPM sort of clued in as to what the whole thought process behind all of this, but also, to have an opportunity to brainstorm some ways to go about doing this that don't feel sideways, coercive, or extortive in terms of price level. Like it
yeah,
needs to be something that's reasonable because I want them to have a package of things that they sell that everyone's excited and comfortable and happy spending money on. Like I would love if everybody that played this game was paying money on a regular basis to do it, and where there wasn't any uncertainty that the game had all the funding that it needed to continue for forever. I don't think that we're in danger in the short term of people not buying enough stuff so the game collapsing. But I mean, it's obvious that CCP needs revenue from Dust and is seeking it. So, you know,
yeah.
we got to figure out ways to do it. But
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that I would like to say from talking with CCP and stuff is I definitely get the sense from them that they are in this for the long haul, but I just see that there's a big disconnect between the community, no, CCP internally believing and knowing that they're in this for the long haul, and the community seeing that and believing it themselves. I mean, the problem is you see stuff like, oh, there's nothing keeping Dust on from other consoles. Yes, that can be to one point. It does need to be finalized for PS3, and the PS3 needs to be supported. But one of the reasons I think that people are so hungry for seeing it on other platforms is that it's an indicator, it's a canary in the coal mine to that Dust is being supported for a much longer period than people necessarily feel that it's being going to be supported for.
yeah, if there's one drum right now that the CPM keeps banging on a daily basis, or not necessarily daily, but every opportunity that we can for this to come up, is that there needs to be somebody in management of Dust 514 that comes out and steps out and takes ownership of the whole situation, catches everyone up to speed on where this whole train is going, where everything fits in, why they're doing all the things they're doing. There hasn't been any leadership that's come out publicly, and that's why there's so much justifiable uncertainty and doubt on the side of the player base, because there isn't a CCP Unifex or a CCP Siegel like there is on Eve's side that is a strong, charismatic person that people trust and people respect, and that people understand, and that is being transparent about where they want to take the game, what they want to work on, what challenges they see ahead. And there, first of all, there isn't any of that on the Dust side, but worse, there hasn't been any of it on the Dust side since there was what most players consider to be a failed launch in terms of, this was supposed to be a big success moment, and instead it was sort of a business as usual moment with a slow PCU decline attached to it. And granted
Okay,
that
okay.
part of
Well, there's some other questions I want to move on to, and
okay, sure.
I feel bad about whoever is volunteering to write this up, if there is anyone. But I wanted to ask a bit about what you were just talking about just now with Gian, CCP Gian, uh, no longer at the company. What is the CPM like now compared to when he was there? Like, have you noticed? Well, you were saying there's a big
Well, we've
difference
spent.
between them.
It's like we've spent. It feels like many more months since he's been gone than there. Um,
I
I
mean,
don't.
I
It's
would I would say the
I guess I
feeling
never really.
really. Yeah,
Oh,
I
good.
wouldn't count. I don't really. I've never really couched it in terms of the CPM relating to CCP, well, with Brandon around versus not Brandon around. I think it's more for me is relationship of where was our communication at the outset back in May, and where are we now. I think in some areas we've seen some dramatic improvements, and having the CPM have a chance to look at blogs before, being able to like confer about blogs and stuff like that before they're published. But it seems that it's not a uniform process yet in terms of communication, both with the community and with the CPM. And I want to make sure, ensure going forward that stuff like the stats for the vehicles and stuff like that, that's the norm for the process and not the exception. And I think that's one of the things I want to see going. It's just it doesn't seem like it's completely even keel in terms of the amount of communication that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way of putting it. Like, I don't really associate things in terms of before Jean, after Jean, because that didn't really seem to be a like pivotal moment. In that we would have occasional meetings that with him, but we've had meetings with CCP Praetorian since then, where he's served very much the same function in terms of not necessarily I'm saying that he's in the same position, but that he was the one sort of bringing down the stone tablets, showing us the big picture as to what's going on, and was that voice that we trust, that we could connect with. So we haven't ever like felt a void necessarily where that's concerned, but um, in terms of the CPM's development, there's there's still a whole heck of a lot of work to go. I mean, there's hits and misses all over the place, but that's always been, especially for me, that's always been uh, our message from the very beginning, which is that it needs to move beyond piecemeal. There needs to be a system in place. And one of the consistently frustrating things is that every time we've brought this up and CCP's said, great, let's sit down and talk about it. And then we sit down and talk about it and some words get said. And then we go right back to the week to week business as usual. Sometimes we get stuff, sometimes we don't, run of the mill sort of what feels like winging it as we go. And that's what's really sort of frustrating, is that we need to get this codified into a repeatable practice, something that we can actually put down on paper and pass off to the next CPM. And there hasn't been a lot of development where that's concerned. We have seen a draft of the charter from CCP Dolan, but then we gave some feedback on the draft, and then it just has sat there since then, to our knowledge. Maybe he's finished it. I don't know yet, but we're still waiting for that. And then the other conversations we've had with other upper level management types on the dust side have been, well, we'd love to do this, we'd love to do that, we want to get a charter started first, and then we can sort of get to business working that way. And so there seems to be lots of pointing back at the charter, like we need a piece of paper in order to do something in a systematic, productive fashion. And you know, that's great if the paper gets written and we start using it and it works. But if not, if we're not going to get this charter or this paper going anytime soon, then we got to move on and start coming up with a system that works anyways, and not just there's there's like a hot potato being tossed around about what to do with the CPM and how to use them and how to get going, and there isn't any like one particular party where the buck stops at. That's the frustrating thing. I wish I could like throw somebody under the bus here, but it's hard because it's a multi-component issue that just continues to persist and persist.
Okay.
And overall, the quantity of communication has gone up, but it's still just as disorganized as ever, and that's what I really want to see change.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going on with these questions. I actually had a good one. I've lost it. Someone was asking about. You mentioned going on to the next CPM, has there been any update on that at all?
Nope, because that's dependent on the charter. I mean, you would have to have a sort of like there has to be a CPM, an official CPM on the books, structured, written up, makes sense. There's a system going on that the devs understand, that the CPM understands, a process to it. There has to be that, however you look at it, before you can have an election. Otherwise, it's a pointless exercise. You'll get a bunch of new people in that will then be sitting around asking all the same questions that we have, and no progress has been made. And you elect people not because of their ability to necessarily do that, set these things up and contribute to that process, but now you have an anybody goes sort of deal because you have a player election. So this has to take place first, and until it does, then you're probably not going to see an election. But it's been sort of stalled for a while now, and so I wish I had a good answer on when this will get resolved. I mean, especially since a lot of us are starting to get into what we knew we would get into about this time of year, which is, either school starting back up or jobs, finally for some of us that have been unemployed. But, our time isn't infinite.
Well, I hate to
And
sound
still
like
some decisions need to be made.
well, I hate to sound like an opportunist, but as I will be running for the first CPM after this one, but
Well, good.
we've dropped. Well, no, but we've kind of dropped 2 members now. I mean, if Kaz doesn't come back, are there any plans to bring on some more? Like,
That's a
non-elected
great
ones?
question, actually, and that's something that I'll speak to Dolan with next time I talk to him about, is ask that question at least. And I mean, because it may be that Genza's just not going to be able to make it back into this anytime soon, and if so, I would love to give an opportunity for someone else that's capable to come in and help out with the workloads. So yeah, that's something I'll talk to him about for sure.
Okay. Some different topics then. I guess we'll move on to. People have been asking all sorts of things. So, and sorry about the people in the Twitch chat, but like it's just not working for me at all, and I'm hearing other people having issues. So just keep posting them in the threads. Magnus Amadeus asks, is the current time to kill, so time to kill as in like time from when a fight starts to one person being dead, is that seen as an issue right now, or is that where CCP wants it to be? Have you heard any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say as far as where CCP wants to do, I'm always going to be super hesitant to like just put words in the developer's mouth. Like it shouldn't be our jobs to necessarily tell you their opinion. Like they should tell you their opinion. Um, are there going to be things that are going to affect time to kill that are in the process of being modified? Yes. Have we actually seen some specific things that have to do with time to kill? Yes. I can think of one really big example. Kane might be able to think of another even, but the point is no, there isn't everything's cool, we're fine with it sense of resolution. This is obviously the creep factor that's come from aim assist and hit detection. Those are the 2 big ones. That are both things that needed to be fixed and needed to work right. But yes, there's been a creep towards people dying faster as a result. Scouts are like in the worst position right now of all. I feel really bad for scouts right now. Heavies have always been kind of in this anemic, weird space because they're not quite better on the EHP front than an assault or logi a lot of the time. Given how easy they are to hit, but scouts are by far the ones that are just getting pounded right now, and CCP is definitely thinking about scouts in a couple of very specific ways. So yeah, I would say no. It's not where things need to be.
Any thoughts, Kane?
I mean, for me, I have a lot of tactical shooter background, so I'm used to a time to kill being very, very short. Although I did play some Halo as well. To me, I mean, the time to kill doesn't feel awful. Now, I know it seems like there are some problem areas. I know that there's been a lot of complaints in terms of heavies, and that may really, probably more to the hitbox. And you just plug a heavy in the head, and they're going to go down pretty quickly. Um, but at the same time, you have the scouts. Although the scouts have benefited somewhat from the new scanning mechanics and their lower profile. So I don't know. To me, the time to kill right now, as it stands, is kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna weigh in on most of these questions. I mostly just wanted to front them, but I have some updates over the last few days. I've been trying new things, and I've found a lot of very good ways to stay alive in situations where I wouldn't normally, and playing around with things like Logi LEVs, actually using the reppers on them, which I know most people don't. I was in a situation yesterday where one of our teammates actually abandoned his Logi LEV because it got stuck on some terrain, and we just had someone jump in, turn the reps on me. I was in a heavy, and I was fighting like 5 people by myself and not dying. So I think there's certainly a lot of room to explore as far as current mechanics, although Logi LEV is apparently getting removed with the vehicle balance. Bit sad about, but
Yeah, I won't say. I mean, I say it's not in a place where it's finished because there's still stuff that needs to be done that's related to time to kill, and there's going to be adjustments made. But on the other hand, I'm definitely in the same boat of there are some advantages to gameplay with a shorter time to kill. You're seeing people use cover more often and not and sort of think about positioning. And I think it's especially interesting that they did it alongside the scanning changes because now sort of positional awareness is a lot more important than ever before. And to me, that's good in a lot of ways. I don't think it should just be a grind fest where the person that has the slightly better shield extender is the one that ends up winning because you're in a open firefight most of the time. Uh, so I think there's advantage to some degree to being people being more vulnerable, but
okay.
that doesn't mean there aren't imbalances that need to be ironed out.
Let's see. Someone asking, why have there not been any new items like drops as vehicles, weapons? But I guess that's just a case of them not being ready.
Because they're not finished.
Yep.
I mean, it's as simple as
Uh,
there's some that are very, 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 very close to being finished. So
very
that
close.
and that it from what it looks like to us, I would say looks more finished than this vehicle rebalance project is. So I don't know, of course, exactly the when, and I probably couldn't tell you even if I did. But and with the given frustration with now that people realize that the vehicles aren't going to be in 1.6 either, um, it'll be interesting to see whether CCP is more or less skittish about sharing dates, depending on how people handle this. That's why I always urge people to, be as respectful as they can about devs that are working hard to hit deadlines. That stuff just happens sometimes. And if you treat them like shit when something that's beyond their control happens, they're just going to be less likely to tell you dates in the future because it just invites nastiness. So, um,
Although I do really appreciate them giving them up front, like being really
giving what?
upfront, like that we're not getting them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's always been our advice when we talked about like all of this stuff. The minute they tell us, "Look, we got some bad news. We know something isn't going to be in whatever," our first response is always, "Well, go tell people that and go tell them right now. Like, don't wait till tomorrow. Don't like. There's not a good day. Just go and tell them right away." Like, all of this stuff should just be in the open, in my opinion. The more I think part of the problem communication wise is that CCP tries to teeter on this this knife edge of what to share and when not to share. Where if they just went for it and just dumped it all out in the open, they'd actually find it's far easier to handle, and people understand everything and respect what's going on a lot more the more information they have.
I mean,
A
that's what
lot of
happens
these,
with Iceland.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
Iceland devs do that.
I would much rather bad news be delivered promptly and early on, rather than trying to hold it off. Because the longer you leave the community, expecting for X to happen, and then you give them Y, um, you know, when you don't meet expectations, you need to have that out front. You know, Delaying it really doesn't give any advantage. I mean, the same goes with good news too. I mean, that's one of the things I think a lot of times the CPM ended up banging our heads against the wall. Um, uh, Maybe not as much now, but definitely earlier on, was that CCP would have good news and they would sit on it, and it's just and then you would have people in the forums gnashing their teeth about this or that, but CCP had a good news announcement to give to the community. I think the same needs to hold true in both scenarios. News faster is better.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one. CPM's issue list with CCP.
I'll
I
be
think we've
perfectly
kind of
honest.
gone
We
over
don't
that
we
a
don't
bit,
have
but
a maintained list, like gimme list of stuff that uh, like we're begging for. More just because of the way, like the fact that we don't have something like a stakeholdership, or we're not involved in something like release planning at this point. Like we could have a list of stuff that we want to see put in the game, or stuff that we want to see resolved, but without like direct input or any kind of structured thing into that kind of process, it's not really practical to have in the first place.
okay.
Now
Well,
that's something that's supposed to be put up as part of the charter. The charter is supposed to involve us being involved with the release planning each month, which is part of why I'm frustrated that the charter is not moving along. Because if
I
that were being,
guess to
theoretically, we're
summarize,
supposed to go in.
it's the charter. The charter is the list.
Yeah, get the charter done, and then we'll talk. Yeah, it's going to start being the answer for everything.
Okay.
Um,
But
yeah,
we're gone way past the hour mark, but so I don't know if you guys have time to stick around. But I'll just keep going as long as
I'm not
you're
in any rush. I'm fine.
okay.
I should be getting told probably about the half hour.
All right. So we've got a little bit
Yeah,
then.
that's fine.
Right. Team deploy queuing options. Uh, anytime soon. I'm guessing no, but
Well, like again, it depends on what the soon is. Like within the next several months, yes, I would say that's. I mean, I think, and that again, I'm not the person that should be declaring one way or the other. I'm saying, do I think myself personally that it will likely happen within that time? Yes. I mean, it's something that they've been talking about. We talk about with because that feature ties into faction warfare, ties into PC, ties into other projects that are being worked on as well. So it's definitely not like shelved status, like, or anything like that, where it's not going to happen. It's just it's not happening quite as quickly. Apparently it's taking a fair amount of work to code up or whatever too.
okay. I think the squad finder was meant to be the first part of that, from what I
Yeah, and
understand.
it's yeah.
So we'll see how well the squad finder works when it comes out. I'll leave it at that. Alright,
Yeah.
next question. Are there any key milestones that CCP have laid out at the moment?
Um
Any that you can talk about?
I mean, I
well
would
well
say,
we don't honestly know like what their
like,
own
the first milestones that were laid out to us, I mean, and they were pretty open about us sharing that with the community too, was the 6 month kind of roadmap that we had. Oh, almost 5 months ago now.
yeah.
6 months.
Something
Oh,
about 4 maybe 4 months ago. It was a roughly 6 month roadmap, and it's posted publicly on the forums, and I mean that like people. I don't think people, and this is again part of our frustration. We didn't like. I don't think the community realized how important that post was because those are very specific bullet points. The CPM was given an entire slide and like 10 minutes of conversation about each one of those bullet points. You know, there was a very very clear, very very detailed roadmap that was laid out. Those bullet points were what comprised it, and if you match them up to all of the point releases, that is what CCP has been chewing through. Now, the fact this question keeps coming up over and over again, is there a roadmap? What direction is CCP is heading? It just goes to show you what a poor job is being done to communicate that to the public because nobody knows that they have a plan. Like they think that they're making this up month to month when they're not. Like that to me is the problem. Like that people don't know that they're working off of a list. So now we don't know. The CPM doesn't know what the roadmap is beyond the 6 month roadmap. So we know they're going to fix the core. We don't know what they're going to do beyond fix the core, and we also don't know. I guess the second part of this question is how have they prioritized or tiered the list? Like we don't know enough about like how they sit down and decide one feature or another, or one fix or another. What kind of meetings go into that, how they rank stuff. Like we just don't have any knowledge of that part of their process.
Okay. Shall we do the fourth question on this guy's list? I mean, you've obviously got this one open. Was like, how does CCP feel we should judge their product, or at least by what markers? I'm not really sure I get the question. So shall we just go next one?
I'm not quite sure what they're asking for either, to be honest.
Okay. Someone's asking about PS4. We know that isn't coming. Someone's saying that they would actually be interested in a sub option. Just as a like, go tell marketing that, I guess.
Yeah, I do too. I would gladly. I mean, especially if it were something where like, let's say you assumed somebody was. See, I don't know exactly how that would work, but I mean, I think you could do something close to a skill point level rate that's similar to a person that hits their weekly cap, and then associate a cost with that, and then, I don't know. I guess that would not require them to go for the weekly cap either.
I mean, I would like to see them have, just more options to allow players more ways to play the game if they so choose, and I think the subscription options would make sense. I mean, maybe they don't necessarily call it a subscription option. They create a booster that kind of mimics or looks like a subscription option, but something that kind of reaches that price point, that kind of nice price point that people are kind of going for, but still gives them, a benefit for their money, a fair value for their money.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. Like I mean, I've had this argument with a lot of players historically, and I mean, you can remove active skill points for a subscription type model, and just give the people those skill points for paying the cost. And of course, there's the question of, well, how do you keep PCU count, or how do you reward, success in battle? And a lot of that, I think, comes down to having a more robust loot system. I mean, if there was better economic rewards coming from each of your matches, if you were able to, I don't know, get more stuff, or something where the satisfaction of being able to pull loot off of somebody's body or something like that, I think your kills, then become a lot more interesting and rewarding in ways that don't require just on giving people skill points. We do have war points anyways, that can factor into various things that are still that incentive level to keep people.
well, when push comes to shove, it really needs to be the gameplay itself. Like Dust itself has to be what draws people in, not necessarily just the grind. Like I have to be enjoying myself in the day-to-day gameplay. You know, that's and what I'm doing in Dust. To me,
Yeah.
that's honestly the critical thing.
Okay, we've got a few last questions here. I'm on page number 3 now. Ooh, we just had a bunch come in. So I guess we'll just do these and then wrap up. Sorry if I didn't get to your question this time. Are you guys up for doing another one of these in like 2 weeks?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, we can certainly. Every couple weeks would be.
Yeah.
Okay. Iron Wolf Saber posted in the thread, so I don't know if he wanted in or whatever, but like he's welcome to come on as well. So
Sure.
try and get some more people, and hopefully maybe we'll have some other CPM members. You never know. Could you ask how people feel about the new HAV operation skill giving access to all the races, as well as the possibility of drop suits being organized this way to allow easier cross-training into other races of the same role?
I mean, personally, for me, I like the fact that in certain areas they have decreased the SP investment. To me, I was always thinking that in terms of the skills, it just would be much better off if the skill tree were more about its breadth rather than its deep than its depth in each category. Like taking forever to get your first specialization up to snuff, to me is not necessarily the greatest thing. But maybe if it takes a really long time to after reaching that first specialization to branch out into other things, I think that's a better way of going. So to me, I think that's a good thing, a good change.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a step in the right direction.
Another question about the same guy. What do you guys think about the relatively high SP costs of drop suits compared to weapons and modules? Would an SP cost redistribution to allow easier access to drop suits, improve player retention through perceived increase in replay value? So I guess he's talking about being able to specialize into more roles, but
It sounds like he's
modules
asking
needing.
about respecs. I don't know.
No, he's wanting uh like the amount of SP invested into a suit to go down and cost and the amount of SP going into like weapons and modules to go up.
I mean, I will say that whether or not the modules need to go up and suits need to go down, from experience from playing, I know that once I started, recently over the past, I would say 3 weeks, I've been messing around with, different results, messing around with the Logi suit. And it's been a huge like I usually play as a heavy, and it's been a lot of fun playing in a completely different role in a completely different suit. So I think that if it were easier for people to have access to more roles, I think that would actually be a fantastic way of giving a little bit more longevity to someone's playing experience, because the more things that you can do, the more fun you can have. I really do think. The only issue then, I guess, becomes you do need the gameplay to kind of be able to shift around, as you play it, so you can basically see reasons and purposes for all the different roles and aspects of Dust. That way, you don't get it to where if it's easy to spread around into different roles, you don't want to end up in the situation where we kind of had before, where everyone specs into just one drop suit in one role.
Well, this is why I'm still very pro respec. I think CCB should be generous with giving players the ability to reassign skill points, especially because there's so much that's still changing. And I think, the no more respecs thing sounded great back when it seemed like things were going to be steady for a while. But now that we know how much drop suits are going to continue to change, vehicles are changing, like, I'm almost fine with them giving a respec out every build because of the two things, because of allowing people to enjoy the game more, um, and try things that they haven't tried before, and to get out of weapons like plasma cannon that they didn't know were bad until they put points in. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of unfun things about being locked into something that you're unhappy with, or just being locked into something that you're bored with. I mean, I've put all my points into heavy suits and forage guns, and I've forage gun the crap out of everything. And frankly, I'm bored about it. And so, I mean, I've started, putting points into scrambler rifle for commando, and that's commando's awful. So I've moved into Amar assaults now. But
Oh, the poor
just
commander.
trying new things has been one of the most enjoyable aspects that's kept me interested and kept me playing the last couple months, especially, was drifting away from something I'd loved but was tired of. And so I really don't see any reason to be stingy about giving players the ability to sort of, play around with their skill points and liquidate stuff they're bored with or tired of.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another option for Orem stuff down the road. Like, obviously, not
It'd need to be, I
you
mean,
could just go
a
and pay and
controlled
reset
balance.
anytime. Yeah, it would have to be controlled, of course, but a limited, occasional thing as a paid service, I'm totally fine with monetizing that sort of thing. If it
Yeah.
helps CCP meet their revenue needs, as well as helps players get something fun out of it. I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
want. I want people to put money into the game and get something fun out of it. And so I'm still
Yeah.
very much pro respec on that. The yes, give them away, sell them, do whatever you can, just give us them side of that
Yeah.
debate.
Yeah, and I would say I'm in the same camp. But and something else I would really like to see though is whether it's at a certain SP mark or at the 30-day mark, I would say giving an optional respec to new players would be,
Oh,
I think,
absolutely.
really good for player retention because I think people, some people get into Dust and they have no idea what they're getting involved in, and so they'll put SP all over the place in that first kind of spurt, and then they'll start interacting socially with corporations and teams and stuff like that. And I think giving those players an option to kind of to figure out what they're doing, I think would really help because you don't want players to be like, well, I just screwed. They get told by someone, well, you really screwed up your character. Granted, yeah, they could spend another 30 days grinding out to get to something worthwhile, but I mean that's not really necessarily the greatest prospect to present to a player in an FPS environment.
There are going to be noobs that are going to join this game and go, "Oh my gosh, I want to be a plasma cannon toting commando," and there,
Hey
there's
now,
nothing, there's
perfectly
nothing
viable build.
There's nothing in the game right now that has a giant warning sign that says "Do not do this. You will be miserable." In a month if
Yeah,
you go down this path. Like, there is no. I mean, so there's obviously multiple problems there. There shouldn't be a trapdoor skill training path, or I mean, there's actual skills that are that way too. I mean, there's like drop suit command level 5 or whatever that does nothing at all. Like, there's
yeah,
nothing in the game that tells you don't train this past 4, because if you do, you're stupid and you'll be wasting your time because it won't do anything. Like, either fix those things and pull the dead skills out of the game and fix that problem, or allow people that have made that mistake and sank points into something that is literally useless to respec it in a reasonable amount of time. I think that's more than fair.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to go and put Dropsuit Command 5 on this alt when you said that. Alright, we got 3 questions left and then we'll stop. I'll go with the triple and double SP events first. So those have kind of disappeared. Will we ever be seeing them again in the future?
Disappeared.
In the
Didn't we have one right after the last patch?
pretty much. I'm kind of
And then
like we're
wasn't
getting
the triple one the one right before
it's
that?
they're not quite the same as they were before. I think you don't get maybe you don't get quite as much SP out of them.
you got more out
Um,
of the double than just like
It's
double
paid
SP.
out differently. You get it at the end instead of it being just double up front.
yeah, I did
But
like
I
it
think
being
that a lot of
double
that has to do
up.
with the logistics of how it is easy it is to. I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
But do they plan to keep doing these events Well,
Yeah,
as far
SP
as I,
events.
yes. I mean,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, they did the triple one at first, and then they changed it to a double. But uh, I'm pretty sure there's going to be one after this patch too, and that's kind of the plan for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Uh, Second last question then is are we limited to just monthly updates at the moment, or will we actually be seeing a winter expansion for Dust?
Well, I mean, this is something that really should be coming from like a CCP dev, not from one of us. But I think I've said this elsewhere before, so that means I've probably asked permission somewhere before. But it's definitely not like an indefinite thing on the monthly patches. Like they're gonna do it as long as they need to. Like I don't know what their plan is beyond the 6 months. Um, they may decide, after a couple more, 1.6, 1.7, maybe 1.8, that they might sit down at that point and decide that they need several more point releases or several more um uh months of doing iterative work before they go back to bigger features. Or it may not, or they may say, hey, we're done, let's move on to bigger features. But this monthly cycle is very specific. Like we need to focus on, it's a very sort of short term. uh I mean, that's how it was originally conceived, let's put it that way, is like we need to double down, get the game fixed up, do it in a rapid fashion. Let's lay out a 6 month roadmap, let's roll out monthly releases. So I guess probably the safest way to put it is there's no guarantee that they're going to continue, that there isn't going to be a an actual expansion cycle eventually. Um, so I know it's something that CCP would like to get back to. There's a lot of like cons, about this, like the big conversation that players want to have, the sort of like people have with CCP Fozzy, and um, the where everything is laid out well in advance and you have big open public conversations. That kind of process won't ever happen for Dust unless CCP moves away from the monthly updates. So um, that's certainly the goal at some point. When exactly that happens, I don't know.
Okay. We'll go on to the last question, and I mean, you guys know that I've been asking this for months and months, and that's well, I'll leave the mad ramble question intact. Why doesn't CCP want to remove NPC orbital strikes from faction warfare matches? You can just talk about orbitals in general, I guess, and
Well,
those mechanics changing.
as CCP has stated before, they really want to move towards a FanFest type mechanic. To me, I really would hate to see the NPC the Warbark strike completely removed, because honestly, if you think about it, one of the biggest issues with the Warbark strike is that it's competing for the same pool of stuff that the Eve side is, and not only that, the Eve side has no control over earning that orbital. Now, if you had a FanFest mechanic, which includes, holding area in orbit and then, a duration of time that gives you an orbital, that makes it much more attractive and eliminates a lot of the negative features to it. So to me, I don't think, I mean, maybe at some point we do get to a point where we remove precision strikes, the Warbarge precision strikes, but to me, I would be hesitant to go that route right off the get go, especially since new mechanics would alleviate so many of the current problems that we have in faction warfare with the current OB mechanics.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it's kind of a misleading question, or it's not a misleading question, but like it's the question itself, or why doesn't CCP want to remove? There isn't really a CCP doesn't want to do this. Like I mean, Kane can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain that every conversation we've had about it has been a two-way pro and con discussion. Like there's been talk of, yes, that's an option. Like they could remove it. That's one way that we could, you know, push people towards using Eve side orbitals. So I wouldn't say CCP's ruled it out but it's just been something that we've all discussed. Kind of, some of us like it, some of us don't. I don't really I agree it totally competes with the NPC strike. So, but on the other hand, like, forcing people to use the Eve side one because it's their only option is kind of the least fun solution. So it would work, and if that's the only thing that they could do, like if it literally all other options were off the table and this were the only option to encourage people to use Eve strikes, then yeah, I'd say probably do it. But that's my opinion. But on the other hand, there's a lot of better ways to incentivize people using the Eve ones, and I'd rather bait them with something with more fun than punish them because they just don't have an NPC strike. And it's not fair to some participants or corps or groups if you don't have an Eve alt or Eve friends. You just don't want to necessarily completely disadvantage people, especially in something that's more casual like faction warfare.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess there's one question for me, and then we'll wrap this up, and that's, war points going up next patch. How do you feel about orbitals then? Because we're going to be seeing a lot more as people are getting a lot more war points.
We've raised it as a concern.
Yeah, I would say that it's something that's on CCP's radar in regards
Yes.
with war points.
Yeah, that's probably all we can say at this point. But yes, it's a conversation we've had, and it's pretty clear to us that they understand that it's an issue.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap this up. I just realized I never actually introduced you two, so if you two want to give your...
Oh, put a name behind a voice.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Heinrich Jaegerblitzen.
And I am Kane Sparrow. That's the same on Eve and Dust side, just different spelling, so have fun with that.
Eve people know me as Hans, of course.
Cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry about the tech issues with Twitch. Well, I'd say we'll hopefully get those fixed, but I have no control over that, so this is a dice roll, really. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the next one of these.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, it was good, and there
Yeah.
was a lot of questions, and I think there was a few I missed. If I missed yours, sorry, we'll post them again, and I'll try and get them in next time. There will be an audio version of this, and there will be a video version of this available. I'll try and get that done tomorrow, so if you missed anything, that will be there. Also, there's a Twitch VOD, so feel free to just go and look at that as soon as this is over, I guess. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for coming on.